Heated Discussion by Geo Dragon, Chapter 1, One Shot. A few weeks passed after we became Equestria's newest prince and princess, and Twilight and I had spent very little time together. But then Twilight quietly informed Celestia that she had just started her cycle, and so we were both given leave to return home to Ponyville. Needless to say, we had only had one thing on our mind, and now the only sounds we could hear were the squeaking of the bed springs and our own pleasured moans and groans. Yes, yes, Twilight squealed blissfully as I slammed my cock into her dripping slit as hard as I could. Fuck me, oh Celestia, that feels so good. Don't you quit on me now, Geo. I want every last drop, understand? I'm working on it, Twilight, I replied in between grunts and thrusts. But forgive me for not being in heat as well. You may think I'm great in the sack. Correction, Twilight interrupted. You are great in the sack, I chuckled. All right, I replied. I may be great in the sack, but at the end of the day, I still have my limits. Twilight nodded as she moaned again, her wings flapping erratically by her sides. That's not a problem, she said seductively, because I've got all the spells I need to make sure you can fuck me all night long. Now stop delaying the inevitable and come already. All right then, you ask for it, I said, with a final push and a long cry of pleasure. I filled my beloved wife with several weeks of pent-up frustration. She shrieked in appreciation, her vaginal walls gripping my cock and milking it for everything I had. Before she hit her own climax a few moments later and squirted her own frustration all over my crotch and legs. We both panted heavily for a moment before I pulled out and Twilight grabbed me, kissing me as intensely as she could. There's a good husband, she grinned as she pulled me into the bed next to her. Now, I don't have a spell to help us recover our energy, so we will need to take a break. She gently bopped my nose with a forehoof. But as soon as we're refreshed, we're going to come back up here, and then I'm going to ride you so hard, you won't be able to feel your crotch for a week. I grinned back and wrapped my arms around her, kissing her on the cheek and running my hands through her mane. Fine by me, I said. Hell, I wish Eustace came by more than once a year. Then again, I'd take any excuse to stay in bed and fuck your brains out. Twilight nuzzled my cheek before a sudden knock on the door caused us both to jump slightly. Exchanging a puzzled glance, I untangled myself from her side and got out of bed. Putting my trousers on, I blundered downstairs and opened the door. Oh, I'm sorry, Your Highness, a mare's voice said. Have I come at a bad time? If I'm interrupting anything, I can come back later. I looked down to see a Pegasus looking up at me with a sheepish expression on her face. She had a light opal coat and a two-tone orange mane and tail. Her cutie mark was a trio of stars with a lightning bolt adjacent to them. As I looked at her, I couldn't help but think that she looked familiar. I thought hard about where I'd seen her, various memories parading through my mind, but one memory in particular stood out. Soon it dawned on me as to who this mare was, and I gasped. Lightning dust? I queried, to which she nodded. What in the name of all sacred are you doing here? The last time I saw you had just been kicked out of the Wonderbolts Academy after... what was it? Oh yeah, nearly killing me with a tornado. Dust winced at the harshness of my tone. That's why I'm here, Your Highness, she replied. To apologise to both you and Princess Twilight for what I did. Please, I know I'm the last pony you want to see right now. Can you at least hear me out? Very well, I said. You've gone to all the trouble to finding us, so we might as well listen to you. Come in, take a seat, while I go upstairs and get Twilight. Dust nodded and wiped her hooves before entering the library and to take a seat while I went upstairs. A few moments later I was back, and with the curious Twilight in tow. Dust stood up and bowed, to which Twilight motioned for her to stop and sit down again. So, Lightning Dust, Geo tells me you're here to apologise, she said. But why do you feel the need to apologise to me? Because I nearly killed your husband with my stupid ass decision to make that damn tornado cloud, Dust replied. At the time, I didn't care about what I did, but when I found later that you were a duke and a duchess, friggin' royalty, I started to feel bad. And when you became Prince and Princess, I honestly thought you would send the royal guards after me to punish me for what I did. By now she was on the floor in tears. Her forehead was wrapped tightly around my leg. Please don't send me to jail. I will gladly accept any other punishment, just not that. Twilight and I looked at each other worriedly. After a moment, I sighed and grabbed Dust's foreleg, pulling her back onto her all four hooves before looking into her eyes. You got kicked out of the academy, I said. I don't know about you, but I think being torn away from your dream is punishment enough. Dust sniffled and wiped her eyes. So, you're not going to have me locked up? I shook my head and Dust grabbed my legs again, this time in a hug. Thank you, Your Highness, thank you. Don't mention it, Dust, Twilight said with a dismissive wave of the hoof. You have shown regret for what you did, and you have been forgiven. Now, unless there is anything else, we bid you good night. We were kinda in the middle of something before you turned up. Really? Dust asked. Is there anything I could possibly help with? You know, as a way of showing my appreciation for what... She cut herself off as she turned her nose up and sniffed the air. After a moment, her eyes shrunk to pinpricks and her cheeks turned red, just as her wings suddenly flared out. Twilight and I blushed as we both knew that she had picked up the scent of our combined arousal and subsequent lovemaking, now making its way downstairs from our bedroom. We all stood in silence, while Lightning Dust tried her hardest to return her wings to their normal position. Crap! I knew I was interrupting something! As I watched her wrestle with her wings, I saw Twilight licking her lips out of the corner of my eye. As a matter of fact, there is something you can help us with, she said. She glanced at me for a moment and giggled. Well, me at least, though I'm sure he would appreciate it as well. With all due respect, Your Highness, Dust started, only being interrupted by Twilight. Enough with the formality, she groaned. Call me Twilight, and call him Geo. Okay, Dust said hesitantly. There was a slight pause before she resumed talking. With all due respect, Twilight, and... What the hell are you talking about? Twilight strolled over and stood in front of the curious Lightning Dust. A moment of silence passed before, without warning, Twilight leaned forward and kissed her with the same level of passion and ferocity that she usually shows me. Dust's eyes widened in shock, while my jaw dropped, but it didn't take long for her to recover, and then return the kiss with just as much fervour. Twilight finally pulled away from Dust, who had a dreamy expression on her face, and coughed. First of all, I'm in he, and we had just finished having sex before you arrived, she said. Secondly, I'm still really horny. So if you really want to help me, then you will show me that the touch of a mare is just as good as the touch of a stallion. Or a man in this case. And finally, she leaned into Dust's ear and whispered, I think you taste nice. Dust blinked a couple of times and then shook her head. You don't mean that, she said. I'm the stupid bitch who nearly killed your husband, damn it. And you're saying you want to fuck me? Geo is right. The estrus is messing with your head. She paused for a moment. And I only returned that kiss because I didn't want to offend you. Your mouth tells me one thing, Twilight said coyly. But if you'll look at the floor, you will see that your body is telling me something completely different. Dust's face screwed up in confusion, but she did as Twilight suggested. A damp patch had formed underneath her rear end, and even as she watched, she could see her excitement running down her tail and adding to it. So, tell me again, Lightning Dust, that you don't want this to happen? Dust's breathing began to quicken as she looked around the room, her eyes finally coming to rest on me. I think your husband might have an opinion on the matter, she said. Did you ever stop to think about what he might want? Both mares looked at me and I grinned. I'll tell you what I want, I said lustily before taking my trousers off and showing them both my raging erection I was hiding. There isn't a stallion alive who wouldn't get off of the idea at his wife fucking another mare. Twilight laughed. See, I told you he'd be up for it, she said. Now, Why don't you let me take care of that for you? She gently pushed Dust onto her back, causing her to let out a small squeak of shock as her moistened mare hood was displayed for both of us to see. Now, let's see if these lips taste as good as your other lips. Before Dust could react, Twilight had closed the distance and was running her tongue slowly and delicately along her crescent. Whatever Dust was going to say was instead turned into a long moan of pleasure, her wings going rigid and her breath reduced to shallow gasps and squeaks. Twilight grinned as she slipped her tongue inside Dust's warm and inviting entrance, teasing her inner walls and relishing the feeling of them contracting around her, as if they were trying to pull her further in. While I stood by with an equally large grin on my face, however, it didn't take long for me to decide that I wanted some attention as well. And with Twilight's mouth currently occupied, there was only one other way to get it in. With this in mind, I casually strolled over and stood beside Dust. She looked at me out of the corner of her eye for a moment, still lost in euphoric bliss, but eventually she realised what I wanted and moved her head forwards, taking me into the moist confines of her mouth. I hissed in pleasure as she slowly took me to the hilt, her tongue dancing around my shaft the entire way. The next few minutes were a haze of moaning, mostly from Dust, as we all gave in to our desires. But eventually she could take no more, removing my dick from her mouth and screaming in bliss as she rode out an orgasm. Her fluids covered Twilight's face, but before she could lick them off, I was doing it for her. "So, Twi," I said as I drew my tongue slowly across her cheek, which caused her to shudder with glee. "Did those lips taste as nice as the other ones?" She nodded. "Good, but I think Miss Dust here needs to return that favour, don't you?" "Oh, yes," Twilight cooed. "And I think she also needs to finish getting you off as well, doesn't she?" She tapped her chin in thought before a devilish smile came to her lips as she lay on her back. "I've got an idea, Dust. Come here and service me." Dust smiled and dragged herself over to where Twilight lay with her legs spread open, exposing her own mare hood to us. Dust was entranced by its beauty and took her time in exploring it with her forehoof, letting it glide along the slit as Twilight moaned in delight. "Oh, wow," Twilight breathed. "I was beginning to forget what hooves felt like. Not that I've got any problems with your fingers, Geo. Of course. Now, I'm pretty sure you can work out what to do to solve your problem. The answer should be blatantly..." "Oh!" She was cut off by a moan escaping her lips as Dust took her exposed clit into her mouth and started sucking on it. I was entranced by the display, as well as the enticing sight of Dust's pussy. I knew what Twilight meant by the answer should be blatantly obvious, and got behind her. "Don't mind me," I said before taking hold of her flanks. "You carry on doing what you're doing." Dust nodded stiffly in a moan at the feeling of my cock against her entrance. With confirmation from Twilight, I eased myself forward, sliding into her with minimal effort. She was unbelievably tight at first, but she soon relaxed and allowed me to start building up a steady rhythm. Each thrust sent her face first into Twilight's pussy, which in turn made both mares cry out in bliss. "Oh, fuck!" Dust moaned. "I can't remember the last time I had a cock inside me." You may not have the size of a stallion, Geo, but at least you don't go off after a few pushes." Oh. "Shut up," Twilight growled. "You're ruining the moment because your tongue isn't doing what it's supposed to be doing." Dust grinned and resumed licking Twilight's cunt, using a forehoof to rub circles around her clit. "Oh, yes. Oh, that's more like it." She looked at me. I think this more than makes up for nearly killing you, Geo. Wouldn't you agree?" I simply nodded to focus on the sounds of my balls slapping against Dust's dripping pussy to formulate a coherent sentence. Removing my hands from her flank, I slipped 2 fingers from one of them into her and used the fingers on the other to rub her clit, making her feel exactly like Twilight was. "I hope you got that spell ready, Twi," I said after a few minutes of thrusting, "because I'm about to come, unless of course you want it all for yourself." No, Twilight replied. "Let Dust experience it for herself. I've already taken the liberty of casting an anti-pregnancy spell, so feel free to bust a nut in her. Oh, you on? Do it! Dust added frankly. Fill me up with so much cum that it leaks out. She moaned again. Please, Geo. Oh, this means so much to me. I haven't had sex for so long now. Oh, I'm frustrated. I'm ready to blow. I beg you, make this a night I will never forget. You got it, I grinned. One Pegasus cream pie coming right up. I quickened my pace, making sure to grab her flanks again to aid me, and soon we were screaming each other's names as I squirted all over her insides. At the same time, Dust had been intensifying her pleasure of Twilight, who was also screaming the mare's name as she hit her peak. Dust had a huge smile on her face, which never faltered, even when her cunt was being filled with cum and her face sprayed with mare juices. After we came down from the high, I pulled out and fell onto my back. Dust and Twilight both came over and licked me clean, the latter making use of the spell she mentioned to make me hard again. Holy fuck! I grunted. That was amazing. Am I the only one who's sad that this is just a one-off? Twilight and Lightning looked at me. Don't give me that look. I can tell you both enjoyed it just as much as I did. We're not done yet, Twilight replied. So let's just finish up properly and then we'll decide. She lay on her stomach with her rump in the air. One alicorn cream pie, if you please. Of course, Twilight, I said as I got behind her. It would be my pleasure, and yours naturally. But, what about Dust? You've already eaten her out, and I refuse to do it as long as she's full of spunk. I glanced at the mare in question. No offence, but you can probably guess why I'm reluctant about it. Is that all you're worried about? Twilight scoffed. You seem to forget, dear husband, that I am a mare of many talents. A quick flash of magic and Dust was clean. Of course, cum removal isn't a talent I like to brag about often. I love you, I said. You know that. I then cleared my throat. All right, Dust, come here. Twilight, you lying on your stomach isn't going to be much use here. I lay on my back. So you might as well make good on that promise you made earlier. Twilight nodded and crawled over to where I lay before, perching herself above my member. She dragged her soaking entrance across the head, making us both moan in pleasure. Dust copied Twilight, except her marehood was perched above my face. Both mares grinned wickedly at me before Twilight impaled herself on my dick. She giggled at the shocked gasp I made, then proceeded to start up her rhythm. Not wanting to neglect Dust, I ran my tongue gently along her slit. We've done this all wrong, I said in between groans of pleasure, listening to Twilight's cries as she grinded herself against me. I should have done this first and then fucked your brains out. Who fucking cares? Dust sighed contently. As long as we're all getting off in the end, right? No, I nodded. Right, I tell you what, though, I made the right choice in coming here tonight. Mm-hmm, I murmured as I finally shut up and got in amongst Dust's inner walls with my tongue. Her own tongue lolled out her mouth as I worked her muscles contracting around me, much like they had done with my cock and Twilight's tongue earlier. Wow, Twilight panted. Now I know how you felt when I was doing that to her. You're right. It's fucking hot to watch your partner have sex with another mare. Are you two always this vocal? Lightning asked. Or are you just putting on a show because I'm here? I wasn't always like this, Twilight replied. Even while I was masturbating, I was as quiet as a mouse. But then I met Geo and everything changed. Her wings fluttered involuntarily. He showed me that I can be loud when I want to. She winks at me. And I love him for it. I love the kid for that, I mumbled, my tongue still inside Dust. Conversation then stopped for what felt like hours as every pony did their thing. Twilight was still grinding herself into my hips, and Dust was enjoying the feeling of the fingers I'd sneakily slipped into her, and I was simply having the time of my life. Oh shit! Lightning whined. I'm so close! Me too, Twilight added. I don't want to wait any longer. I want you to fill me up right this second. With those words, I came. Twilight locked herself in place as I coated her wound with a thick layer of cum, and I had to hold on to Dust's flanks to stop her falling over. Both mares were screaming my name while I was praising every deity known to man and pony. A few minutes passed before we all came down from the highs of our respective orgasms. The smell of sex and sweat hung in the air, far more prevalent than before, and the floor was covered in cum and mare juices. I was lying on my back with Dust on my left and Twilight on my right. They were both fast asleep with large smiles on their faces, so after patting myself on the back, I joined them. I don't know what time it was when I finally woke up. All I do know is that I was on the couch with a blanket over me. The library had been cleaned up, the smell of sex was gone, and Twilight and Light and Dust were in the kitchen with a cup of tea and a plate of pancakes each. I got off the couch and walked into the kitchen. There he is, Twilight cooed as she kissed me. My exquisite husband. I was just telling Lightning that I feel a lot better after that. The effects of my estrus aren't as bad as they were this morning, she giggled. So, it would seem that the touch of a mare helped after all. The touch of a mare and a stiff dick in your cunt, I said as I sat at the table. Dust smiled at me as she passed me my own tea and pancakes. Thanks! So, Dust, are you still happy that you came to apologise to us? She nodded eagerly. Damn right I am, she replied. That was the best sex I've had in, well, ever. Her face fell and she sighed. Pity it was just a one-off, like you said. I'd love to be able to get that any time I wanted, but I can't exactly expect you, a married couple, to accept that. Dust, look at me, Twilight ordered. I'll admit that this has all happened a bit fast, but I know that you didn't go along with it simply as a means of relieving your own sexual frustration. I'm not stupid. I can tell that it meant a lot to you. Lightning was silent for a moment. After I was kicked out of the academy, word spread about what had happened, she lamented. Every pony I met would turn their noses up at me. The stupid bitch who nearly killed the husband of Celestia's prize student. I was lucky enough to get a job on the weather team in Philadelphia, but I had to put up with all the snide remarks from my co-workers, who only worked with me because they had to. So, after I heard about the coronation, I knew that I had to make things right. So, I came here to seek your forgiveness, which you gave me in the most spectacular way imaginable. Do you regret what you did? I asked her. I do, she replied. You know, when I got here, I was fully expecting you to slam the door in my face and tell me to fuck off. But you didn't, she chuckled weakly. In fact, by letting me in, you showed me more compassion than I felt in months. Ponies are right when they say that you two are great. You wanted to apologise, I shrugged. So I let you. Besides, it's not good to hold grudges. You showed a lot of guts by coming here, when you expected to be rejected, and I admire that. Plus, if I can be honest, you got a nice flank. Dust blushed. I want to start again, she said timidly. I want to get to know both of you. And I really need to find and apologise to Rainbow Dash as well. She rubbed one of her legs. What I'm trying to say is, can I be your friend? I was about to reply when Twilight cut in. No, she said simply. I'm afraid you can't. Wait, what? Lightning stammered. But why not? I thought we could be friends after all that's happened. We can't be friends, Twilight replied, because friends don't fuck each other like we did, which is why I'd like you both to consider the idea of us entering into a three-way relationship. My jaw finally hit the floor at this statement. Are you serious? I asked. You mean that we include Dust in our daily lives, with our friends and our duties, and then we can all experience some amazing sex whenever we want? Twilight nodded, and I pumped the air with a fist. Hell yeah! I'm up for that! I grinned like a madman as Twilight looked at Dust. Hi! She blinked in surprise. I don't know what to say, but won't ponies ask questions? After all, I've only known you for a total of... She trailed off while she works it out. 5 hours! So, pardon me for being a bit worried about how ponies will react. Once they hear about how we've forgiven you for what you did, they should be more willing to accept you, I said calmly. But if it makes you feel any better, we could still announce that, but keep the actual relationship quiet until you feel ready to tell every pony. That way we can act like it happened all for a matter of months rather than the best hours of my life. These words seemed to relax the nervous lightning dust as she nodded. That seems like a great idea, she replied. And it would also give me a chance to, well, get to know the couple I'm going to be screwing every chance I get. Twilight let out a sigh of relief. I'm so glad you're both open to the idea, she chuckled. When I thought of it, I was sure you'd dismiss it as something conjured up by my sex-addled mind. But I can see a lot of potential in you, Lightning Dust. Not only that, you're a brilliant lover, and I can't wait to get to know you better. Dust fluttered her wings eagerly, similar to how Rainbow Dash did when she was promoted to lead pony back at the academy. I won't let you down, she said with determination. Thanks for giving me a chance, both of you. It really means a lot to me. She opened her forelegs for a group hug, which Twilight was the first to accept. And as I joined them, I couldn't help but think that this was the start of a new chapter in my life, here in Equestria, not only with my wife, but my mare friend as well. Needless to say, this was a journey that I couldn't wait to begin. I fucking did it. There you go, Geo. Now you have to like Flash Sentry more. I did it. I'm joking. Anyway, guys, hope you've enjoyed. See you later, guys. Bye.